Blaze senior politics editor Chris Bedford recently sat down with Mark Lucas. He's the executive vice president of the Article 3 Project to discuss his work on pushing Trump's nominees through the confirmation process. Take a look.
I'm here with Mark Lucas, executive vice president of the Article 3 Project, which has become among the most aggressive Republican/conservative/MAGA organizations out there pushing confirmations and other different projects through Capitol Hill, a place where I think that the reason why Article 3 Project was founded was because Mike Davis, your co-founder, saw just how tenacious and effective the Democrats were capable of being in the Kavanaugh and Gorsuch hearings, and thought, well, I think there ought to be something on the right. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Right now, you've been working on the different confirmations. I know in the past you're friends with Pete Hegseth. You worked with him at Concerned Veterans for America when you were in that world. But what's up next is Tulsi Gabbard is a big one. Marco Rubio and people like him, they kind of sailed through. They did well. They're of the system. They're from the system. Tulsi Gabbard is a former Democratic congresswoman who has questioned intelligence, how dare she, coming up now against Senate Republicans who don't seem that open. So before we get into the weeds, first, could you tell us a little bit about the Director of National Intelligence, which is what she's up for being confirmed as, and what kind of role Trump is hoping that she can play in his administration?
It's such an important role, and one of the things I love about Tulsi Gabbard is, like myself, she served in the National Guard. She was in the Hawaii National Guard as a military police officer. She's deployed to combat. So she understands the intelligence world from a boots on the ground perspective. And we've seen that the intelligence agencies have been weaponized against people like President Trump, and she will bring order to those agencies. So for her, I think the intelligence agencies have gotten too big. I think they're collecting way too much information. They lack focus. And when you have people like her or Pete Hegseth or myself who have served in combat zones, we want to make sure that our intelligence, number one, is correct, but that it's focused. And when you have an unfocused intelligence community and you're collecting too much, you can't focus on the threats that are imminent. And we saw that really up close and personal with the attack of New Orleans.
And that is kind of what the DNI does in general. It's a post 9/11 position to coordinate and help bring focus to what the CIA is working on, what other aspects of the intelligence world are working on. But so why her? Why is she getting this sort of pushback? There's just started, over the last 24, 36 hours, there's been articles in Axios and Semaphore and in other newspapers going after Gabbard with a whisper campaign of Republican senators on the committee, none of whom attached their names, trying to undermine her confirmations. They're listing off that she went to Syria when she was a member of Congress, as if congressmen aren't allowed to visit war zones. They listed off her support in the past for Edward Snowden, which I know is controversial in the Senate. What is the goal of this whisper campaign? Why is she a threat in a way that other nominees really aren't to some of the Senate Republican consensuses?
I believe there are two reasons why Tulsi is such a threat. Number one, she's an outsider, right? She's not a part of the club. She wasn't a part of those 51 former intelligence officers who are targeting President Trump. She comes from an outsider perspective, and they fear the reform that she's going to bring to all of these agencies. That's number one. Also, I think the second reason why she is such a threat is that she's a Democrat, former congresswoman. She was a part of this incredible coalition that President Trump built on his campaign, which also included RFK Jr. So I believe that Tulsi poses a major threat to the Democrat Party, because if she can defect, and if RFK Jr. can also defect and help President Trump and really help America and our America First policy priorities, she could ruin the Democratic Party.
Who are some of the senators that you think are worth really looking at or putting pressure on in this campaign? Who are some of, I know that Tom Cotton is the chairman. So far, he's been pretty quiet on this whisper campaign. Blaze has reached out to him with requests for comment. We'll see if we can get some news on that. Who are some of the senators who are really, do you think, leading this push against Gabbard?
I'd say let's contact every United States senator. And the reason why I bring that up is these confirmations have multiple phases. And when we saw with the announcement of Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel, the conventional wisdom in Washington was that those nominations were dead on arrival. And we had certain Republican senators express a little concern, and they were quickly given an attitude adjustment due to our major media blitz. Mike Davis and I went on every outlet we could to defend them. We mobilized our grassroots army, and you can go to the Article 3 Project website. We have an action center where people can contact their senator via phone, email, and social media. And we were able to lob in tens of thousands of messages over a couple weeks. And those senators went from being questioning those nominees to when can they start. So with Tulsi and with RFK in particular, I would say I haven't seen people that have been overly vocal because of A3P's efforts with Kash Patel and also with Pete Hegseth. But as we get into the hearings, which are scheduled for next week, we finally have Tulsi Gabbard's hearing scheduled for Thursday. We'll start to see where the cracks are. But I think a lot of these Republican senators are taking a wait and see approach. They don't want to get too far ahead of anything because they know that the grassroots supports Tulsi, RFK, and President Trump's nominees.
Yeah, and you were instrumental in helping to turn to basically knock the wind out of Senator Joni Ernst, who was the most vocal initially against Hegseth. She changed her vote publicly. McConnell, who I think probably put her up to the whole thing, of course, was silent the entire time. But the neoconservatives have the wind back. They've caught their breath again. They seem to be pushing for this again. They're worried about any changes to the intelligence world. They're worried about they're not really worried about Ratcliffe over at the CIA. He's not going to flip over the apple cart, I don't think. We'll be in a good nominee, a solid nominee. It's not going to change everything around like Tulsi Gabbard could. But what you talked about her ability to have an impact on the intelligence gathering. What could a director of national intelligence really do to actually reform intelligence, the intelligence apparatus? Or is she more just going to be a voice on the inner council who is maybe more skeptical than some of her colleagues?
I think it's both. In all of the above approach, I believe there's 18 different agencies in the intelligence community that has been created since 9/11. You know, I remember I joined the military after 9/11. I was all in to go to Afghanistan. I wanted to kill the people that were responsible for the attacks of 9/11. I even bought what they were saying about Iraq. I believed in that they had weapons of mass destruction. So you have these post 9/11 people like Tulsi, myself, and Pete Hegseth who believed in the cause. But we saw this huge growth in our government. We saw the Department of Homeland Security and all these agencies that were supposed to protect us from another 9/11. But instead, we've seen those agencies, which I believe were created by a lot of people with a good intent, we've seen them weaponized. So I believe that Tulsi Gabbard will be able to look at those from an outsider approach as a military officer who's actually served in Afghanistan overseas and be able to say, okay, let's reduce the scope, let's bring it focused. And then also she can provide that counsel like you had mentioned before to the president, and she'll be able to work really closely with Pete Hegseth and others across the cabinet to really streamline this intelligence operation.
And I would like to just have someone in the inner circle who takes a jaundiced eye to Senator Mitch McConnell's defense appropriations. Is able to take a look at it and be able to get right to the president's ear. But she's not the only nominee you're working on who's under fire. She's the most obvious because she's the one who really does, I think, challenge the deep state in a way that, well, the deep state, of course, cares about outsiders. They don't like anything to really be changed. RFK's mission to try and make America healthy again doesn't threaten any kind of global liberal orders. It threatens the sugar lobby. So why are groups like Mike Pence's group trying to go after RFK and sink his nomination?
Well, RFK Jr. is one of the most fascinating nominees that we have. And he really broke the mold. I mean, this is a member of the Kennedy family who is being rejected by the Democrat Party. So he poses one of the biggest threats to Democratic politics. But also, he is going to go in there and there's no sacred cows at HHS with, like you said, the sugar industry, making America healthy again, the food industry. We have major entrenched interest that he's going to challenge. And he's got the right vision. He just wants to make people healthy again. I mean, how can you be against that? But he's going to face strong headwinds. And one of the things I enjoy most about RFK Jr. is that he is hyper-focused on Tony Fauci. And for me, I served in the Iowa Army National Guard, and they tried to force the vaccine on me. And I was in a position where I said no. I had a stellar record in Afghanistan. I led soldiers in combat. I was a company commander here at home. I was an S3 operations officer. I was on the fast track to be a battalion commander. I was the type of guy that you want in the military. And they sat me down and they formally counseled me for rejecting the COVID-19 vaccine. And President Joe Biden didn't have my back. Lloyd Austin didn't have my back. All I want to do is make a choice. RFK Jr. understands that. He's not anti-vaccine. He's pro-freedom. He wants us to make these medical decisions that are based off what's best for us. And that threatens a lot of people in the establishment.
So what is upsetting Pence's group then? The former vice president's been working with Leonard Leo, who's generally done some good work over the past, but to actually launch a campaign critical of RFK Jr. And I understand. I mean, I'm a observant Catholic in good standing, very pro-life. We'll be in and around the March for Life tomorrow on Friday. He doesn't really see HHS. He's not going to be touching the abortion policy if the president doesn't want him to touch the abortion policy. I know he's long been a pro-choice Democrat or pro-abortion Democrat, but that's not what he's going in there. It seems like he's more, like you said, a threat to the vaccination lobby. I mean, just living in Northern Virginia, trying to find a pediatrician who is willing to allow parents a little bit of options and flexibility and choice on the scheduling of vaccinations for newborns, who was willing to answer your questions about why this vaccination is important or why it isn't, what the threats are, without just politicizing it, attacking you, is so incredibly difficult. This is a thing that families all over the country are facing, and he's a threat to it. So is it really just the abortion issue that's upsetting Pence and other conservatives, or is it deeper than that?
I think Mike Pence is desperately fighting for relevance. And let's remember, when he was the former governor of Indiana, he was long forgotten. He wasn't a serious political contender, and Donald Trump, the candidate, resurrected Mike Pence's political career. And when Pence decided to try to primary President Trump, that was his last chance of being elected president. So I think we have kind of a sad tale here of a guy that wants to remain relevant. He's looking for a way to do that. And I guess by him trying to lean on his pro-life credentials by attacking RFK Jr., that's his last hope. But I'm also a pro-life Catholic. I take my faith very seriously. I trust President Trump and RFK Jr. when they say that RFK Jr. is going to be focused on HHS. He's not going to be focused on abortion-related matters, and that he'll defer to Trump and also to J.D. Vance on those matters.
So aside from these two, which have gathered a lot of headlines, who are some of the other nominees that you're working on, and especially in any kind of a manner that Trump's administration really has been doing on overdrive, challenging the vested interests in Washington and essentially the career bureaucrats, the blob, the way things are done and not supposed to ever be challenged? Who are some of the other candidates that you're keeping an eye on, or battles that you're keeping an eye on?
Pam Bondi as the Attorney General, and also Kash Patel as the Director of the FBI. We are very excited about those two picks. A3P's founder, Mike Davis, is personal friends with both of them. He's helping advise them through the confirmation process. And Kash Patel is the most popular nominee that we have seen at Article 3 Project, just due to the number of actions that grassroots people have taken. We have seen how the Department of Justice and the FBI were weaponized against a former president. And the American people resonate with the fact that if our government could effectively target a former president and a billionaire, then none of us stand a chance. I sure as heck don't stand a chance here in Iowa. So that's why we are so excited about Kash Patel and Pam Bondi going into those institutions, reforming them, holding the bad actors accountable, Nobody is above the law, as President Joe Biden said, and we look forward to holding these people accountable because we believe that there was a criminal conspiracy against the rights of a former United States president. Those bad actors have to be held to account, and that's why we need Kash Patel and Pam Bondi to be confirmed as quickly as possible.
And I think it looks like Kash Patel, I know you have to go in a minute, so I'll wrap this up, but it looks like Kash Patel's going to end up facing and having an answer for the president's pardons of January 6th defendants and convicted. Do you think that the Republicans are going to be able to hold strong on that? Doesn't seem like Republicans were completely silent about the treatment of January 6th prisoners. I mean, it took Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders to have to raise a hand and say, shouldn't these people have a trial after a year of people rotting in prison? But now President Trump's released them. He said this is over, this is done, this political persecution is over. It seems like this may be a tactic that Kash Patel is going to face. Do you have any insider knowledge on where Republicans might fall if it comes down to that?
Republicans understand that the pardon of those January 6th defendants is a political winner. The American people knew that justice was not being served. And this is all a deception technique by the Democrats to deflect the attention away from Joe Biden's pardons of people like Tony Fauci and also General Mark Milley. And as a former military officer, I believe that General Mark Milley committed treason. He not only embarrassed our country with the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan that resulted in the deaths of 13 service members at Abbey Gate, but he also potentially committed treason. So I think that with Kash Patel, during his nomination or during his confirmation hearing, he'll do a great job. He'll understand when they're playing politics and how to focus on the issues. And really, Pete Hegseth, out of the gate, he kind of set the tone. He showed the rest of the nominees how to effectively navigate those confirmation hearings. And I believe that Kash Patel will knock it out of the ballpark.
Mr. Lucas from Article 3 Project, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.